Hello, friends. This is the Hollywood Progressive Team back with you again. Dick and Sharon here, Linnea on the bottom, and Ed over there with the glasses on the right. Uh, Over the weekend, all four of us saw a play, not together necessarily, but a play called Babyfoot. It plays at the Matrix Theater on Melrose Avenue, Fridays through Mondays through November 20th. It's written and directed by Tim Venable. It stars Paul DuBois, Hope Lauren, and Daniel Dorr. In one sentence, it's 3 a.m. in the day room of a recovery center where three addicts are gathered to take their best shot at finding a new lease on life. How well do they do?
Well, before we talk about how well they did, I want to talk a little bit about the Henry Murray stage. So you just mentioned that this play is performing at the Matrix Theater. And according to the brochure that they provide, the Henry Murray stage, where the play was actually performed, this was just the second production at the Henry Murray stage. And we saw the first production, which was Blue. And Henry Murray was one of the founding members of the Rogue Machine, and he passed away in 2014. And so they decided to use this small area, which used to be the green room, to allow for performances of world premiere productions and new play workshops. So I just wanted to put that out there because the actual size of this area where they put on the play, I think that contributes as much to the experience as the play itself, as the words that were written by the playwright, as the performances conducted by the actors. The setting is very it's impactful. And for that reason, among others, it was very enjoyable. It felt like you were actually sitting in one of those rooms. Now, I haven't been to a lot of those meetings, but I have been to a couple. And I've never been to one of the houses. And you can talk a little bit more about that if you choose to. But it was reminiscent of what I'd seen in my life. And I thought that the play was worth seeing.
Ed,
and I would say in terms of the space, there's a term used for the 99 seat and smaller theaters in Los Angeles, and that term is intimate theaters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Henry Murray stage puts the intimacy into intimate theaters. There's only about 30 seats, but it worked very well. You're really up close and personal with the actors, who are all great. And I did want to say that Daniel Dorr, who plays the unfortunately named Blackie, which we could talk about later, I don't know if I'm going to throw this out there. If any of you noticed that his hands were very expressive, and even in the 99 seat theater, let alone in the Pantasias or the Amundsen, or even a mid-sized theater like A Noise Within, unless you were in the front row, you wouldn't necessarily see the hands of the actor. But his hands were full of the kind of tension that his character was crackling with. And I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I thought that was a really good touch. So it's basically two actors, and as has been mentioned, Paul DuBois plays a third character named Fred, who has a very small part, but it's a very pivotal part. So his role is also very important in the play. And we're not going to divulge plot spoilers here, but he has a very important role to play. But it's basically kind of boy meets girl at recovery center. And the boy meets girl storyline is as old as ancient theater, going back to the ancient Greeks and so on and so forth. But I can't remember it ever being done before at like a rehab center. And what's really clever is that Alexis, who is portrayed by Hope Lauren, not to be confused with Sophia Loren, although she's also very attractive, which I think is an important part of the character. Hope Loren has completed her obligatory 90-day stint at the recovery center. And it's obligatory that you must graduate or leave after 90 days and go out into the big bad real world. On the other hand, for Blackie, who is played by Daniel Dorr, it's his first night there. So how about the rest of you? I thought that was a very clever touch, the alpha and the omega, so to speak.
Yeah,
What do you think, Nia?
I agree with you, Ed, and I apologize in advance. I'm working through some voice issues. Yeah, it was a really interesting intersection of people where you have the woman who is on her way out of recovery and she has all of these tools. She's gone through the process. And then you have Blackie who comes in and hits his first night with varying levels of intentionality to be in the program. It felt very forced upon him at first, but he sort of evolves through that, which is wonderful to watch. And then the third character is sort of this old hat who has been there and done it and has been living his life beyond recovery for however many years, they said. A really interesting intersection of people. There was some discussion among my dad and Sharon after we saw it about a couple of specific scenes in there. But at least for me and my generation, the entire show felt very natural. It felt very much like what would happen with two young people in a room, one scared out of her mind to leave this safe space, and the other scared out of his mind to be forced into what should hopefully become a safe space, and what sort of accumulates from that specific kind of uncertainty and tension. I really, really enjoyed, like we were saying, the intimacy of it. There were people who came late who didn't know if some of the seats were seating. And I was like, oh, no, that's the set. You can't sit there. Oh, that's the set. Very intimate. You're right there with them. But honestly, it puts you right there with them. You're feeling all of their emotions. It's radiating off of their bodies. You feel like you're just a fly on the wall, just observing human emotion as it happens and unfolds line by line. It's really a magical experience. And again, like Ed said, yes, names are eluding me, but they were said before. The young man who played Blackie, extremely expressive. I think, if I remember correctly, he was coming off of heroin and going into rehab. And again, we had some discussions about what that might actually look like with someone. Not really sure they'd be as coherent, but and what the playwright mentioned in his note in the playbill is that this play is meant to give insight to those humans who have not experienced addiction or substance abuse, either directly or someone very close to them. It's meant to give them a sort of look into what that experience is like. There's a very pivotal moment where everyone holds their breath and they experience the difficulty of someone who struggles with substance abuse and being faced with that substance. Really beautifully well done, very well crafted, intricate. I really enjoyed it. I do think it's worth seeing, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nia. So for me, it was a little like Homecoming, because as Nia knows, and Sharon has heard secondhand, for when I was younger, I spent 20 years helping support a halfway house for alcoholics and addicts, and in fact stepped away from a decent paying job that I didn't like to actually live there with 20 recovering alcoholics and addicts. Some of them coming out of prison, some of them coming off the streets, all of them coming out of jail. So I love the set with the meeting schedules and the sobriety slogans hanging on the wall. the pot of coffee that was always on, the furniture kind of crammed together. It looked very natural. I also thought that the characters, you might think not so much the janitor, Fred, but the other two, Lauren, who's been there for 90 days, and the other fellow who's been there just part of one day. Their emotions go back and forth. They're in love. They hate each other. They don't know which way they're going. That resonated with me as how newly sober people are. They kind of they blow with the wind, and falling in love and falling out of love, and not knowing what you're going just made a lot of sense to me. I also kind of resonated with Fred, the janitor, because when I did that, not only did I live in the one halfway house, but I went to others to try to build a network of recovery. This was going on in the height of the crack epidemic, so there were people crawling out of the walls, looking to find ways to get sober. And I had a LA County sheriff who in the middle of the night would drive up on our lawn and dump out a drunk rather than take him to jail. And I'm yelling out the windows, and no, we're not a 24-hour deal, And I would bring the guy in and let him sleep it off on the couch and maybe let him in. And I recognize people. Fred has been in that place. He's a Vietnam veteran that picked up a morphine habit. He's been there 30 years. And you kind of find out why that is. And I resonated with that because I knew guys just like that.
So if I was to say that, if I was to offer one bit of criticism, it would be about the depth of the characters. The playwright talks about how his intention in writing this play was to give people sort of a bird's eye view, particularly people who are not themselves addicts or don't have close loved ones that have experienced the awfulness of addiction. I'd say that the characters lacked any. We needed more about them, to care about them, to get invested in them. They are more than addicts. In this day and age now, I think that we all have a tendency to kind of think everybody's experience is our experience. So I've never had an addiction to alcohol or drugs, but I have many very close friends and very close family who have either are currently dealing with addictions or are leading healthy lives where they are in recovery. And I just think it's unusual to meet someone who doesn't know someone, especially if you live in Los Angeles or New York. I can't imagine that, there are people that don't know people who have struggled or who haven't themselves struggled with addiction. So it would have been great to know more about the characters than was shown, to know that they were more than just addicts.
Well, I'll have to say, I pay attention to Neighborhood Mount Washington and Internet for Our Neighborhood. And there's all kinds of criticism of those homeless addicts. And obviously these people have never they've driven by an addict, but they don't know any, and they think they're just animals and from a different world. Somebody else started to say something.
Ed was about to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that I too have been had people very close to me deal with substance abuse. So I've had firsthand experience with that, but I never had any firsthand experience with a 12-step program, a rehab center, a recovery facility. And I felt that they very realistically took us into that. I do have some criticisms, even though I think it's overall has excellent dialogue. It is on the short side. It's like 75 minutes or less, one act, no intermission. So maybe there could have been more exposition about who those characters were other than being addicts. Maybe there could have been more of that. But my main criticisms are twofold. This thing about we're close, we're far, we're friendly, where sparring, this yes, no, hot, cold, that got tiresome to me. That was very repetitive, redundant, and it repeated itself.
Yes.
So that wore out its welcome pretty quickly. The
Yes.
other thing, and I'm very curious how Linnea and Sharon feel about this, is that why the hell was that character named something that could also be considered a racial slur? We should hasten to add that the character who plays Blackie is a Caucasian, and his name really, it's his nickname. Obviously, it's not on his birth certificate, I presume. His nickname, it's never at any point explained.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if he felt that maybe that was unnecessary or perhaps even offensive.
I thought it was weird, and I think that it goes back to what I was saying about us not knowing anything about the characters. So maybe if we knew something about his background, it would tell us why his nickname was Blackie. And there was a couple of other things, like just the name of the play, Babyfoot, and how they, they yelled this mantra, Babyfoot, Babyfoot, Babyfoot. I never understood why did they do that.
Right. You know that it's referring to table soccer.
Yeah.
Which there is a table. Yeah, there is a table soccer game set up in that tiny space. I thought it should have been called Baby Steps. Yeah, I thought that would have been a much better title. But yeah, I don't particularly care for the name of the show either. But for me, these are just kind of quibbles because first of all, this is a play for, I believe, anybody who's interested at all in the issue of substance abuse and the 12-step programs and Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery facilities. Anybody interested in that, I think, would be interested in seeing a dramatization of that. Also, if you just happen to be somebody who doesn't have an interest in those subjects, but you just love great acting and great dialogue, I think that you'll get your money's worth from seeing this show too.
Nia, further thoughts?
Maybe. Yeah, this was a very well put together show. Like Ed was saying, the dialogue is probably one of the most natural line deliveries we've ever seen. Both of these actors were very comfortable in their roles and knew who their characters were. And that came off in very easy, sort of back and forth, natural conversation style dialogue. Yeah, I also think it's worth it. I also enjoyed that. Yes, there was the yin and the yang and the push and the pull and the interested, not interested moments. I enjoyed how each one resolved. I enjoyed how each time they were sort of challenging each other and surpassed tiny little personal milestones. And then at the end, it ended very hopeful in the sense that it was very real about the scariness of leaving a safe space, but knowing that, you're given the tools, you've done it for 90 days, you can do it for another 90 days and another 90 days. I think I can imagine how that could be very hopeful to hear for people who may be struggling or loved ones who have loved ones who are struggling.
Yeah, so I like what Ed saying it about it being, a good introduction to recovery and so forth. But I wouldn't put it too far in that box.
Yeah.
Because if you say it's a recovery play, well, then only people that show, it's like if you have a play about veterans, then the audience is filled with Vietnam veterans and nobody else. This is not Hamlet, which is about murder. This is a really interesting story that so happens to take place in a theater. You started to say something, Ed. Yeah, in a halfway house, right?
Yeah, and I think that the story does pose what is the, for lack of a better term, the alternative or the solution to mind-altering substances to take you out of a very unpleasant day-to-day reality, at least in a society like America. And it poses the alternative being human connection, and to a lesser extent, the importance of having meaning in one's life, of having a purpose. And I myself am not a substance abuser, but I'm definitely an addict. I'm a theater addict. I love the live stage. And it's almost impossible to believe that through this weekend, downstairs in the Matrix Theater is also Heroes of the Fourth Turning. It's incredible that this small little theater company, which won the Ovation Award, beating out the huge theaters in LA like the Ahmanson and the Fantasias and the mid-sized theaters and so on. They won the Ovation Award when the Ovations were still being given out for best season. That's like winning best picture, so to speak.
Wow.
But yeah, so Rogue Machine is very cutting edge, and it is among my favorite theater companies in the world. They do really great work. And I was very impressed by Babyfoot and also Heroes of the Fourth Turning, which unfortunately is closing Sunday, although it's possible it may be brought back because it was extended a number of times. And I also would like to, if you don't mind, just quickly mention what I have coming up that I'm going to be reviewing for Hollywood Progressive and so on. And on Saturday is LA Opera's premiere of Rossini's classic, The Barber of Seville. And then next week, I think it's October 25th and October 26th, in a lead up to the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy, is going to be a reading, a staged reading of Lee Harvey Oswald's interrogation based on the notes taken by the detective who interrogated Oswald before Jack Ruby whacked him. So I'm going to be seeing that at Theater 40, which is on the campus of Beverly Hills High School. Although it's a professional theater, it's not. I don't mean to cast aspersions on school theater, but it's a fully professional theater that happens to be located there on that campus, Theater 40. And then also next week, for the film fans out there, I just want to mention, is one of the best annual, if not the best, film festival in Los Angeles, which is the AFI, the American Film Institute Film Festival, is coming up next week.
Great.
Thanks for that, Ed. It's too bad that you didn't join me and Nia and Sharon, because afterwards Nia took us again to a really great Lebanese restaurant, right? A mile or so away from the theater. And there I regaled them with stories of how treatment center romances work. But I won't repeat that here.
Good, because I'm sure our audience is not interested. Thank you so much, Nia and Ed, for joining us for, once again, another recap of a play that we all enjoy. And we'll be seeing you guys again soon.
It's curtains for us.